What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video today, and in this video I'm going to be taking a look back at Airliners International 2024 1 year later. So this video we'll be looking back at some of the fun memories from last year's Airliners International convention in Kansas City as we get set for Airliners 2025 taking place in Atlanta, being held at the Delta Flight Museum June 25th through the 28th of 2025. It's going to be a fun show with a lot of new details having since come out, and there'll certainly be more still to come as well. Now, with a video like this, I always try to get a special guest on board, so for today, I do have a new guest for the channel. It is Gabriel Cramp Aviator. So, Gabriel, thanks for taking the time today to join me. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much for joining me. I'm doing pretty good today. You know, it's the standard end of May. I always like to think of the end of May into June as being a little bit chaotic, just like the Christmas time, but without all the pretty lights.
Absolutely. That's certainly one way to put it. You're at that halfway point between the start of the year, the end of the year. It certainly can get a little chaotic when you have all these plans in place, especially with Airliners International involved. It certainly gets very busy as we come closer to the convention. So as we record this, we're just a little over a month out, but this will go out a little closer to the show, probably within the week or so before the show, as I've got a couple other videos lined up. I think I'll probably be releasing this after my video on the Captain's Log article that I had published a little while ago. I'll be making a video on that. So if you want to check that out, you can click the card somewhere in the top right corner so that you can go check that out and just see my perspective on Airliners International just from me personally. So as we move forward, let's talk a little bit about how we discovered Airliners International, because over the years, this convention has been discovered through mostly word of mouth, a lot of old-fashioned methods, not so much really with social media, since prior to 2022, they didn't have much in the way of any social media presence on like YouTube or Instagram or anything like that. They do have a Facebook page, which seems to be decently populated, but other than that, I haven't really found much before 2022. So at least for me, going into the convention, it was like going in blind. There wasn't much to go off of with any reference material or anything and all that. So it was just kind of a little surprise, really. I guess it's one way to put it. But as for you, Gabriel, talk a little bit about how you personally discovered Airliners International. Was it a similar method, or was it something a little different, perhaps?
Yeah, I would say, once all the 2022, convention videos online and posts started coming out, it sort of caught my attention. I think it was around November 2022. It was probably, a couple of years ago now, but I remember it because it was interesting. I was like, never heard of this before. Let me do a little bit more research on it. I went on the website, and this and that, and, started poking around. And then, I said to myself, well, look, I don't know a whole lot about it. Can't find a whole lot of information. Looks interesting. I'm going to register. And I did that in December of 2022. And, well, then, 6 months later, showed up in Dallas. And after making a few pretty measly decisions on my end, I think that was mostly spearheaded by the fact that I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. And I think a lot of times when you don't know what you're getting yourself into, you make mistakes and you learn from them.
Yep.
And but that is, I found out through your postings, through other friends' postings, things like that, and also just poking around online, looking at things. It kind of was a stumble upon effect. Like nobody specifically told me.
Yeah, and you certainly had the benefit of having that word of mouth through social media, since I went to the Chicago show after having stumbled upon it myself, just browsing through the internet. I was in a group chat a while ago, and someone posted that they got some airplane chairs at the 2021 show, which was in Phoenix. And that was supposed to be 2020, but we all know what happened with that. And I was very intrigued by what this show had to offer. And I remember I also looked through Gemini Jets' Instagram page. They were posting about this convention, and it looked really cool on the surface. So I was very intrigued, just like you said. And after I found at least whatever information I could put together, this is like, okay, this looks really cool. And the fact that it's in Chicago for 2022 is going to be, it should work out. We tried looking at flights, but they're pretty expensive, so we resorted to just making the whole trek down Interstate 90, and on the way we had to split it, stop halfway, Rochester, Minnesota for one night, which is a nice little city. The first time I've ever been through there. I've been on I-90 through Minnesota a couple of times, but I've never stopped in Rochester, which is just a little bit up the road from one of the highways that you intersect with as you near that city. But once I went there and made all those videos, then that's kind of when you get this larger audience that comes in, because for me, compared to other major YouTube channels that are more mainstream, I'm just a small drop in the bucket. But for a community like this is I would say it's like a medium to maybe large-ish sized YouTube channel. So having that audience to put this convention out to certainly helped in getting a new crowd going to this show. And especially, if I remember right from last year, Chris had mentioned that the convention attendance was sort of teetering off a little bit. It was on a slight decline. But once we started coming in, then that has gone back up a little bit. I'm not sure if it was right where they were before the decline started, or if we're still kind of working our way up. But certainly,
yeah, whenever I heard actually Chris tell us last year, we're above what they were at pre-COVID, which is great to hear. They were way above that. I think it's around 3,500 or maybe a little bit greater for Kansas City, which is pretty good attendance.
Yeah, for that amount for a city like that, especially one that is a little more difficult to reach if you're far away. Now, fortunately, with me being in the upper Midwest, I do have that advantage of using the interstate again, this time I-29, which I would have loved to use the whole way there, but unfortunately there was some flooding on the Missouri River because we had a lot of rain in South Dakota, so that caused quite a bit of flooding. So the interstate was closed right by Omaha, and that stretch is notorious for flooding when it rains really hard, especially once all that water moves downstream in the Missouri River, then that whole area is just underwater. So we had to take a very scenic detour, and we're glad that we did that, because if we had taken the normal detour, which would have been to take an interstate like 20 miles east and then cut back on Interstate 80 towards Council Bluffs, Iowa, that would have probably added another hour to our commute. So this detour, I think it only added like maybe 20, 30 minutes at most. It was certainly not a major delay as we would have initially feared going into that.
Yeah, I think when you mention delays, you can think about all the sort of things that can happen, that can go wrong in trying to make, your plans for an event like this work. And I certainly experienced some delays for Dallas and KC, and that was, that's that. And hopefully this year, knock wood, that it's going to be a pretty easy, simple. For the first time, it's actually an easy one for me to get to. Being in the Northeast, in a major Delta city, it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
15 daily nonstop, so I got loaded with choice. Not the cheapest, but you know what? I think when it's an annual thing, you treat it in your mind differently than if it's every month.
Right.
If it's a monthly thing, you're like, I really don't want to spend that money. But you're like, well, I only do this once a year in June, and the next time I'm going to do it is going to be 2026. Maybe I have a little larger budget for that. Maybe just allow yourself to, use the knowledge that actually it's a worthwhile endeavor. And I personally think the last 2 years were definitely worthwhile endeavors. And for anyone listening who's, on the fence about it, by all means, if you can go, you should.
Yeah, and that's the same thing I tell people too, If you're kind of on the fence, just think about what you can do when you go to this show, because the memories that you make are priceless. It may cost you a lot to get there, and especially if you buy stuff at the convention. You can ask me about my first show, because I've been through that, I've been through that story so many times. But when you look back on those memories,
I'm not going to bother you asking about the first show. I've heard about it. I've heard about all the others and all of what you get. But I think it's more than that. It's also like you walk away with probably a deeper appreciation for the community.
Yeah, and I
think is what's important.
Yeah, because it's one thing to interact with people just on social media, but when you actually meet these people in person, it's it's a whole nother experience. I felt that very much so when I saw Connor for the first time at the Hilton in Chicago. It was certainly surprising just to see him. It's like, oh my God, this is actually happening. And now here we are 3 years later, and we've done many things together, both over the phone and in person. We did the Florida trip last year, which was an awesome experience, the first time that we've traveled outside of Airliners International, and we'd certainly love to tackle on something else outside of Airliners in the future. That's certainly within our plans, and hopefully very soon we'll be able to get something put together that we can embark on later in the year. But
yeah, I would agree. I would say I definitely made some new friends from going to these shows, and
yeah,
especially last year in Kansas City. I think that was one of the major stepping points for me, because that was after I had a pretty challenging first year away at college, and so I think I was looking for something to sort of pick up the mood a little bit, and I think it did just that. It pick up the mood and some, but it didn't just pick up the mood that I was attending. It picked up the mood that I was able to meet the people that I had met a year prior, but viewing it all in such a different light, like such a more of a reunion rather than a first meeting. And I think that it's a very different sentimental feeling in that regard.
It is, and especially the first time you meet someone, it's certainly a surreal experience. But then when you go back a second time, then it's a much different thing. And then, subsequent times after that, and especially outside of Airliners, it's certainly a different experience.
And I do have a plan outside of Airliners too, myself, for this summer, which could be lovely. I'll be talking a little bit more about that on my postings. Coming up very shortly here.
Absolutely. So now we move on to just sort of the expectations entering our first shows. I know you kind of hinted at it with you weren't really able to piece together that much, so you were, to put it one way, just going into this a bit blind, but...
And I was, but at the same time, I think having a platform online where there's enough information, not just to get a sense of the show, but to actually sort of kind of get a schedule. Like, I made a spreadsheet, okay, and I didn't make a spreadsheet ever, but I knew that I had to maximize my time, because it's a long story, but I had to wake up at 3 a.m. and, things didn't work out to the best of their abilities that year in Dallas, but having made a schedule and knowing what there was to offer and trying to make the most of what time that you had, I think that's what I really tried to do, because I knew that there wasn't going to be able to do everything. You can't do it all, and
right.
That's just the truth.
Right.
But if you can choose what you want to do for your interests, the people you want to talk to, the people you want to have time with, and then just walk away saying, this is worthwhile, that's the most important. I'm not the type of person that says go and do everything and then literally be up and moving from 6 a.m. to midnight. I don't want that, because I'm not going to create any memories from that. In fact, I'll forget it all. But if I spend my time really doing something that means a lot, that's so much better.
Yeah, and that's the same mindset I had last year with Kansas City, since Anderson, Syracuse Aviation, he wasn't there for more than, it was probably just a little over, barely over a day. Yeah, because he got there with Connor Wednesday afternoon, or like late Wednesday morning or so, and then he left then the following afternoon, since he had conflict on his end. But it was just the time that little time that we had together, I made sure that we maximized that. We did the TriStar experience together right after I got there on Wednesday, and then
I was there with y'all. Yep.
Yep. We did all that together, so you were there too. And then the spotting meetup, while it was brief, we did get some Kansas City spotting in, and then we just hung out for a while. And then Thursday, we made the most out of it in the morning, and the hour or two that he had in the ballroom before he had to get to the airport and head back home. But it was in that moment too, and I've mentioned this before, that I told him we should do something again later in the year to, I guess, make up for the time that we didn't get in Kansas City due to the stuff that was out of your control on your end. And that's how the Florida excursion came to be, and that was our way to make up for that.
I think you make a good point. Like, this convention can be a good jumping point for other experiences in the future. And
Right.
actually, for me, it certainly was. I did a little day here, over in Boston with Syracuse Aviation actually back in January, and we're looking to do more in the future, and of course with other people as well. But obviously, distance doesn't play to our strength in that regard.
Right.
Obviously it requires a fair bit of planning on our end, but I think needing to plan something can be healthy because it lets you plan out so you can maximize. Just really like, what can I pack in to this time to make it special?
Yep. And once you do that, you really get that understanding of you're gonna make these memories that last a lifetime, even if it's just one or two with someone. Then you have that sticks with you, and that's what's most important to me. And especially with we only get to do this 3 days out of the year, 4 days depending on when you get there. If you're there all on Wednesday as well, it's just about maximizing those opportunities and just building on whatever friendships that you might have already entering into this show. And this show has certainly helped me strengthen those bonds with the people that I'm very close to already, even though we are so far apart from each other. We don't get to do this often. And it's been a jumping point for me to pursue other things, like that Florida trip as mentioned, and then had a friend come over last week who has been to this convention a couple times. He's not going this year, unfortunately, since he's got some stuff on his end that he has to take care of, which is understandable. So we made sure to do something beforehand so that we had that time in there, and we didn't go into the show feeling sad that we didn't get to see each other this year. So that is where that comes into play. But now, as we move to our next segment, now I want to actually look back on Kansas City itself and just some of the fun memories that we made from that show together. So as I get this set up, I do have the Airliners International 2024 community content playlist up here, which as of right now
phenomenal job making all that work together and putting it all in. I know that you get so many videos thrown at you, and now it's all in one big playlist that you can go back and sort of relive. I guess the 4 whole days, to be perfectly honest. You could relive it all and remember what you did.
Yeah, thank you. It is just a spur-of-the-moment idea from the Chicago show a few years ago that I wanted a place where I could find all these videos of Airliners International on YouTube in one place, because I didn't see anything myself, so I'm like, why don't I just make this myself? I have the power to make playlists, and I can put other people's videos in there, and that's certainly what we have here. But as we look at this playlist, there's certainly a lot of videos, and you can look on to Gabriel on your phone or whatever other device you have so that you can see what I'm looking at as well. But it is on there on my YouTube page if you're not able to find it, or you can search for just the Airliners 2024 search term and it will pop up. It's usually one of the first 5 results, at least in my experience. But just let me know when you get there, and then we can start looking through that.
I'm already there.
You're already there. Okay, you're
I'm
fast.
already there because your channel is one of the ones that's pinned on me. So because I have it on the left-hand side tab because you're one of the frequent posters.
Yeah, and that's just all about the grind. That's what we do, and certainly picking up here as I've got more time on my hands without school bogging me down. But so we have the top of the page of the playlist. I have resorted this a little bit as I now have some featured videos up on the top, and then after that it's all the other videos sorted chronologically. So on the top I've got my experience video, which is much shorter since I did do the daily vlogs. So from the first day I was there to the last day, which I don't know if I'm going to do the same thing this year, to be honest, because I probably am going to film way too much at Atlanta. But this will be something to assess when I get there, so more details.
I don't think you filmed too much. I think you just filmed the right amount because you film what means something to you. Like if something's just, I feel like I want to record this, you go ahead and do it because you're not going to get that feeling unless something about it speaks to you. Right.
Yeah, and I did do a pretty good job of showing a more human side last year and just showing more of those interactions.
Yeah, I think showing the human side is important because, you can show as much of the ballroom as you'd like. You can show as much of the particular events as you like, but certainly the human side, the connection side, that's 70% of it, really.
Yeah, and that's
You know,
what's
it's why you attract so many repeat attendees within our community, is because of that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and it certainly gets, I don't do it for clicks or anything. I just do it because I think it's fun to show this stuff, and naturally people they'll click on it anyway. So if I can get that just
and I think, probably attendees will also want to relive memories, and they'll click on it too. But also those who are looking, to explore it and see, like, hey, what was it like last year? Maybe Atlanta's their first show, and they want to understand what's this all about. Just kind of like what I was looking for in 2020, in the fall of 22, waiting for the 23 show in Dallas.
Yep. So this community content playlist is certainly beneficial.
My advice is certainly do not get there on Thursday at 10:40 a.m. if you really can avoid it, especially if it's a 4-hour flight.
Yeah.
Do not do what I did.
Yeah,
That's a grave mistake I made first year. First year is always going to be rough because, as you said, not a whole lot to go off of, and there wasn't a whole lot in 2022 because obviously the community content playlist didn't have 175 videos at that time. So, you're looking at maybe 30 or 40. And so I think it's kind of, you get less information, but now that we've experienced it more, we can give more concrete advice to those who are looking to attend for the first time.
Yeah.
And, I can even give more specific advice for next year too. This is what, 23 to 4. I keep thinking it's the second show I've attended. It's the third, Atlanta.
Yep. It would be.
Just to show how fast time goes.
Yep. It would be. This would be your third. This will be my fourth, which is crazy to think. That's been.
I know. It feels like we were just in Dallas together. Yeah.
Yep. But now looking at this playlist, any videos, at least from the top 10, because I have 10 featured videos before you get into the chronological stuff. Out of those 10, which one would you say you enjoyed most watching back?
Ooh, that's a really tough one. I really think that... I think, actually, it may not be on here, but I think your initial reflection hinted at a lot of very important, actually psychological, feelings you might have as you leave an event like this in anticipation of next year's. And I think it's important to point out what will come up in your mind as you go through this experience, whether it's the first, second, third, or fourth time. It's going to be the same.
Yeah.
It's going to be sort of that slow buildup, and I would say probably you don't think about it much until March, April, and then it's on your mind like crazy until June.
Yep.
And then it is still on your mind, but in a different sort of gratitude, I guess is the word that comes to my mind. The first week of July, you get home, you recoup. If you traveled many time zones, you get de-jet lagged. And then you start thinking about how powerful of an opportunity it was to do what you did, and what it brought to your life, and how it enhanced the landscape of other people. And now how can you go out and share what a wonderful event this is to others, so that, because as you know, the younger generations are the future of this. And so to continue to allow them to have the experience is so incredibly important.
Yeah.
And they got to know about it. And we're doing the job. We're doing the work of, we're almost as if we're elders now at this point. In some respects.
Now,
because we're doing the work of the elders at a young age.
Yep. Now we have our stories to tell new people, because I ran into a few people. They've been to this show for so many years. They had a plethora of stories to tell. And now that we've been to the show a couple times now we have our own stories to share with other people. So it's just kind of the passing of the torch.
Do. Whether they're good stories, whether they're funny stories, I think they're all good stories, but whether they're funny, whether they're just, time that you spent with other people, a particular tour that you went to that was super interesting, that maybe you wouldn't have had a chance to ever see in your lifetime if you didn't go to this.
Yeah. And going back to
in my mind, when I think of that, I think of Jet Midwest. I don't think I would ever have known that it existed unless that was offered last year.
I know that was a phenomenal tour to get on, and just seeing the boneyard of all the old aircraft was awesome, and getting to photograph all of them certainly will be another aspect if we can do something like that Atlanta Air Exchange tour. I know they'll have some restrictions on what aircraft you can and can't photograph.
Right, which makes sense. Maybe there's some higher security ones in there.
There probably is, I would suspect, but we'll find out when we get there. And then that Warner Robins Museum all the way down in Macon, Georgia. It's not a boneyard, but it has a lot of old military aircraft there, so it'll be very fun to check those out, as long as they both work into my schedule. And I think so far it could, but I don't know for sure yet. But drawing back to, as you mentioned, my immediate reflection video, that was, if I remember right, that was a spur-of-the-moment idea, because this is when Connor was still with me. He was still on the big trip that he had, which started all the way back on June 8th of last year. So now it was June 30th. And I wanted to make something that just captured the essence of, coming right out of the convention and just having all of these memories. They're all still fresh in our minds, and I have a way to compile it all together into a video and just share that with others so that people know, okay, this is what it's like when you come straight out of it. And I think that's what really captures the essence of Airliners International. When you have those memories, they're still fresh in your mind, you're able to tell a vivid story. And they'll still stick with you forever, too. But it's just when they're fresh in your mind still, you really form that better understanding of how it all played out and what it really means to you significantly. But yeah, that one goes deep into the playlist. I didn't think about putting that one in the featured videos, but just going back through them all, and there's the four in the line, the Airliners haul videos between Connor and I, the my Day Zero vlog, and the TriStar experience. Those are certainly some of my favorites, I would say, as well.
Yeah, your Day Zero vlog, that's a really good one. I actually watched it the other day, actually. It popped up for me, and I was like, well, I'm going to relive a little bit of KC for myself. And, now that we're underneath the 30-day mark here, I know it's sort of looking at it in terms of no longer something that's in the distant future, but actually something that's right on our doorstep. And it's crazy to think that we're a year older, but the meaning hasn't changed.
Yep. A year has passed. We've been through our own experiences. We've done our own things, whether it's for aviation or for something else. We've all done our own things, and now here we are. We're right on the doorstep of the next Airliner show, and it certainly has come quick. I didn't think the time was going to pass by this fast, but now just looking back on this playlist and seeing like 10 months ago or 11 months ago on a plethora of these videos now, it's certainly surreal to think about. And even with some of the more recent videos, there's still some that are, 4-3 months ago. And then from there, we've kind of had a little bit of a drop-off. I know Connor has the big bank of videos up towards the top, but obviously he's been very busy with a fair share of other commitments. He moved to Charlotte late in May, so that has taken up quite a bit of his time, but I know that he does have plans, if this hasn't happened yet by the time this video comes out, that he will get the last chunk of the Kansas City videos out. I think, if I remember right, he mentioned to me there was the banquet dinner video and maybe one or two others that I can't remember off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, and those are scheduled for Thursdays as well, and I like that.
Yep,
it's sort of a midweek special.
Yeah, the once weekly, that was a good schedule on his part, and it works out so well just because he has all of these other videos to work with all the airport updates and even the real life content, and now like these model analysis videos, which have recently popped up, which are really good subjects to cover too. And I mean, they don't really get that much coverage from a general perspective.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the inspirations for some of those may come from, you attend this show, you find something interesting that you want to talk about, and you make a video on it, and you see what happens, and you see what you can talk about, and then maybe it's successful, so you start a series. And I think, while I may not have made content last year, I'm definitely in it for this year. I've got the plans. I've got the storage space on the devices, because that's the most constraining part of recording anything is do you have the storage space? Because
Yeah.
if you don't have the storage space, it will not record.
That-
And once you get that sorted out, well, I guess, you really can just see what comes of it and see what moments speak to you.
Yeah, I think...
I may not do 40 videos like you might. I might do 2. But even if I do 2, if there are 2 that mean a lot, there's nothing you can do to minimize that.
Yeah, and, I mean, I have... Whoa, that went rolling way out of my reach there, but I already have 3 SD cards. I've got 2 that are in the little caddies, and then the third is in my camera, of course. But I think I may have to get 1 or 2 more, just because I don't know for sure how much I'm going to film. Now, if I go in there and I only use 2 or 2.5 of those SD cards, then, great. I at least prepared ahead.
You should always assume you're going to be recording more.
Yeah.
Because it's what happens.
Yeah. And I think with me as well, I want to find a good balance between recording stuff and just experiencing the convention without having a camera in front of my face, because I want to find that good balance between making videos that I can share with people, but then at the same time, just finding that time to experience the convention and just browse through stuff without having, my camcorder or my phone in front of me filming stuff. It's great to have it, but I just feel like it can get a little bit too anonymous or whatever. Maybe not anonymous is not the right word, but...
you look like a reporter when you do that, for sure.
Yeah, I just think you want to find that good balance with filming and just experiencing the convention. Because I think if you draw that perfect balance, then what you can tell in those videos will be of higher quality. And I think I did okay with Kansas City last year with having that good balance, but obviously there's always room for improvement in everything. So I think with this show, I want to take that a little further and find that good balance. Get plenty of content that I can use for YouTube, and then at the same time just experience it in the moment and just have that written down for when I make those videos, because finding that balance, that's what's important. It's all about the balance.
Yeah, and you have what, it's you get there Wednesday or whenever you choose to get there, and then you leave Sunday morning, and it's kind of like, well, you only have a certain finite number of days, and you think about the amount of hours you spend on each individual thing, whether that may be experiencing, whether that may be focusing on the recording aspect, just keeping that, always remembering that actually experiencing will come first. You will experience things pretty much in the front of your mind for most of it. And that is probably why I didn't get much sleep last year, if I'm perfectly honest. I think that I was thinking too much. I was planning too much in my head and organizing my thoughts, because I neglected to make a spreadsheet. And, it's called learning lessons of life, really. I think people say, oh, just be complicated to learn life. No, it doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to mean a lot to you.
Yep, and I think you mentioned the excitement, trying to sleep right before the convention, and you just can't. It's just the adrenaline that runs through you, and I've experienced this before. I think, with the Dallas show, because I had to get up super early to get on my flight to Dallas on American, I don't think I barely got any sleep that night. If you had to get up
early, I don't know whether it paled in comparison to me. I was 3 a.m. But
I think I was like 3 or 4, if I remember right, and then my flight left at 6, so probably a little more closer to 3, unfortunately, but, it is what it is. That was our best option to get to DFW, and then, for this Atlanta show, because I'm going to have to fly, I don't know what I'm going to do the night before I fly. It's like, am I going to get any sleep? Or am I just going to be too darn excited that the adrenaline will just carry me through the night, and then it'll carry me through the day until I just completely crash by the end of that next day when I get to Atlanta. So it's just, it's hard to describe that properly with that adrenaline-fueled energy or whatever. Just when you don't get that sleep because you're way too excited for something that's happening the next day, and then the day comes, you go through it, and sometimes you'll go through it just fine. Other times you might reach the end of the day and you're about to plop on the floor and fall asleep for 8 hours. I know that happened when I was at Dallas, because I know Connor and a bunch of others got into the ballroom early that night before Chris did that special. I wish I was there, but I got too tired by the end of that. By the end of that
And
day,
I wasn't even there. I was asleep because I had the following morning 3 a.m. wake-up call. And it's all about the choices you make. You know, you have to, you have to be there for, I guess, what you choose to be there for is what you value the most. And experiences is what I value the most. You know, I don't feel the need to come home with 17 suitcases full of purchases, but I do feel the need to come home with a mind full of memories.
Yes, and that's kind of another thing too to find a good balance between getting models or memorabilia at the convention, and then in your mind you have this bank of memories that you can run off of, whether it's just within your mind or maybe you have it in a video somehow, you have a clip of it somewhere on your phone or camera. Just having that balance there too. It's just striking that balance between a little bit of everything with this show. You want to find that delicate balance. And the other thing too, you know, choose the stuff that you want to go to, which tours you want to do, what seminars you want to go to. And if there's anything else in the area that maybe interests you, do you have time to go to that as well? That's another thing. So you just want to find that balance in everything. And that's just kind of the motto with life. Just find that balance in everything. Find something that keeps you occupied, keeps you happy. And Airliners International certainly fulfills that. And
I would agree. It definitely does. And, you know, as we continue to get, you know, we're not getting any younger. And I say that in a nice way because, you know, obviously life becomes trickier the older you get. But you know, it reminds me to think about, I don't think I would ever go back in time physically to re-experience this. Mm-hmm. Because I think when you experience it once, you learn. And I think every subsequent time, it's just better. Mm-hmm. Yep. Even if it's shorter, it's better. Yep. So, you know, it's great to relive it, and you're going to relive it with video. You can relive it, you know, with whatever notes or you know, footage that you have, and then maybe friends' videos as well if they post those, and I know that we do, and that's great, and that's where it's at for me. It's like, let's, look back, but also look forward into the future. Like, there is so much that we have to look forward to that it is unbelievable. We are way... I think people often overestimate. They're like, okay, now this is over, and now this is the end of life. And I think that some people may have that person perspective. Now, I never did, but I think it can, that sort of sadness that it's over can easily lead you to forget that actually there's a lot more to come. Yeah. You know, just because it's Sunday morning and I'm off to the airport for the flight home does not mean that life and experiences stops there. It doesn't.
No, it does not. And I've seen this, you know, I've seen this myself too with the emotions that come when friends have to leave and they have to get to the airport. You know, I've seen those emotions. I've seen a couple people, they've even cried when they're leaving. It's you don't see those emotions unless they truly enjoy the convention. And these people did, and they wanted to last another 3 days if that was possible.
I don't know if I could last 3 days. You know, my energy level isn't the highest.
Yeah, it just...
I think I would just be so tired I'd sleep the last 3 days. But, you know, it's, again, like a balance. You know, I think, is 4 days perfect? I think it is. And I don't need it more. You know, I think 4 days is generous in many ways.
Yeah. I mean, this is the only event out there of this size, and
for sure,
it'll be that way for many years to come. And this convention, you know, with the change in the crowd that has come out to this show, it will certainly, the landscape is going to change over the years, and I am excited. I'm thrilled for the future of this convention and what else it has to offer, and especially with all the new people we keep getting to come on out every year. I see more and more people posting.
You know, within a decade or two,
it'll be different.
It'll be down to us to keep it going.
Yeah.
Right? You know, we'll be in the shoes of those running it.
Yep.
20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, and that's going to be something that we may not think about that now, but before we know it, it's going to be on our front porch, and we're going to be our name is going to be on that World Airline Historical Society website as convention co-host.
Right.
It very well may be. We don't know at this point.
Yeah.
But that's always an eventual, opportunity that you have going well into the future, as it shifts into what I would call probably the peak. I think, we keep moving up in size and scope of things, and as we, bring it into the next decade, it'll only get better. Can't get worse.
Nope, cannot. And this convention, we'll still keep seeing a lot of new people coming out. They'll learn all the balances with this, and they'll make their own memories too. And I can't wait for what all new people will get this year. I know at least several new people, and I know that they are thrilled to go, and they've seen all the content now. Now there's a good library of content on YouTube, on Instagram, that people can look on now, and they can see what this show is like. They can see any aspect of it, the welcome reception, the tours, the seminars, the ballroom itself, and even what people get at this show. It provides this library of what people can expect.
And for Atlanta, the ballroom is a hangar.
and it is this year. That's the best part. And that is what I'm most certainly excited about with Airliners this year in Atlanta, which is crazy to think we're this close to it now. It's almost here.
Yeah,
the finish line.
As we talk today, we are 25 days, and that doesn't sound like a whole lot. But at the end of the day, every day we'll get a little closer, and maybe that adrenaline rush will be that you get maybe not the greatest sleep a few days before, and that is what it is. You sleep, you sleep when you get home. I think that's what I always felt. I felt that in Dallas. I felt that last year. I slept when I got home. Okay, I probably had 24 hours solid sleep when I got home. And that's okay, because that's a way of processing everything that happened from when I got there Tuesday at whatever the heck time it was after that delay until Sunday when I got home after that crazy delay as well. Yeah. And it just highlights the uncertainty that, you can go and maybe your plans get a little bit, delayed, and that's fine. But the time that you're there, spend it well. Spend it well.
Spend it well. I was hoping...
Choose your own passage.
Yep. Spend it well and choose your passage. But I was hoping we would be able to react to some videos, but this video has gone really long, so unfortunately we're kind of out of time for that, but maybe in the future we'll certainly pursue something like that for another video.
Yeah, because, actually that'd be an interesting opportunity to reflect on this year's show 4 months from now, 4 months after it happens. Ooh, maybe let's relive, let's go back through the years and kind of take some of the most important pivotal moments from each of these shows and just watch it and see what kind of emotions come out, because a lot will.
Yep.
We may not have the time for that today, but definitely as we move forward, we can do that for sure.
Yeah, we'll certainly revisit that topic at another time, but it was great to get this conversation in and just look back at Kansas City and just talk about other aspects of the convention, because there's so much to it. It's really hard to put it into a more concise format, maybe like a 10, 15-minute video. This is over 43 minutes now. But it's great to get all these thoughts out as we are right on the doorstep of Atlanta and what that will have to offer. And that will give us a new plethora of stories to tell, however they might happen. But Gabriel, thank you so much for coming on this video today. It's been great to chat with you, and your first time having a major role in at least one of my videos anyway, other than maybe some appearances in previous Airliners videos, but your first major video here on this channel so far, and maybe you'll end up on more. Who knows? It just all depends.
I would say that keep your eyes peeled on some other channels. There's some potential opportunities down the road, and maybe a couple guarantees. I can't tell you which ones yet.
That'll be fun to find out. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video looking back on Airliners International Kansas City and just kind of talking more about the convention in general and of itself. And we're certainly excited for Airliners 2025 in Atlanta, June 25th through 28th at the Delta Flight Museum. Be sure to attend. We'll see you all there if you're going, and if not, we'll see you next year, wherever that will take us for 2026. And with that being said, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next video.